Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're watching this live, if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for giving up your time. Before we start, I'd also like to thank Doug Miller for allowing me to do this. And finally, my final thank you is to Dr. Paul Bedford, who has really helped me out massively. My understanding of technology and how these things work is really minimal. So, Doug and Paul, thank you very much indeed. In terms of the aims of this session, what I'm really looking at is the human experience and the considerations for the gym floor. And when I talk about the gym floor, it's about instructors, it's about personal trainers, and it's about individuals who may deliver group exercise in the so-called functional space. That's sort of where I'm coming from in terms of the considerations. In terms of the journey that we're going on over the next 40 or 45 minutes, I've got three outcomes really. I'd like to define the experience. I think it's impossible over the last 6, 7, or 8 years to go to a conference and listen to a speaker, and there are some really good speakers delivering information on this. It's impossible to listen to a podcast around our industry or read an article in a magazine without someone using the term experience to illustrate a point. I'd like in my own small world to actually, over the course of this session, try and define what the experience is. I'd then like to look at, in terms of on the gym floor, how we actually go about influencing the experience. And then finally, just to tidy things up, I've tried to give it some real world value. What does this mean for us as instructors, as personal trainers, as individuals who deliver classes on the gym floor? What does this actually mean to us? Where is the value? And I suppose there's value for people, individuals who own and run facilities as well. Just a little bit about who I am. My name is Keith Smith, and I would define myself as a trainer and a tutor who works in the fitness industry. As a trainer, I currently work as a personal trainer in a London club. My client group is part of the general populations. My audience is part of the general population. And a specific part of the general population, individuals probably over the age of 40 who have had bad experiences in the past with exercise. So I suppose in a way that influences what I'm going to say today. Since 1995, 1996, I've been a tutor. I've been a tutor in the UK, delivering level 2 and level 3 courses, as well as assessing them for training providers and colleges. And I've also designed and implemented and delivered and evaluated CPD courses, bespoke courses for equipment manufacturers, equipment suppliers, as well as operators. So that's just a little bit, if you like, about me. Before I do start, and we start with our first outcome, I'd just like to mention that these are the books that have influenced my thinking over the last couple of years. And it would be dishonest of me, if you like, not to mention these books and more importantly, link them to the authors. Because the authors have put a hell of a lot of work in terms of researching and a hell of a lot of work in terms of writing it. So I just wanted to mention sort of the books that have influenced this session. So we're going to start off, if that's okay, and we're going to try and define the experience. What is it? A lot of people use the term to illustrate a point, but what is it? And please remember that this is my idea about what the experience is based on what I've read and what I've experienced. Before we look at the experience, I'd like to take a step back, if I can, and look at what a service is. If you look in the dictionary, a service is defined as an act of help. So individuals come to me or come to a facility because they want information, guidance and support in terms of achieving what they want to achieve, and they believe that can be achieved via some sort of exercise, movement and activity. I need a service to actually be able to help someone. So without a service, I can't do the job. So in the past, I've done my qualifications and continue to update my knowledge, skills and behaviours So I can offer an act of help to an individual or a group that comes to see me. Services, in my little head, can be designed and custom built, and they're designed around our mission, our vision, and our values. They're designed around our story, our narrative about who we are and how we want to be perceived. They're designed around our audience as well as our niche. But for me, a service nowadays, with so much competition out there, a service is just the baseline offering. I'm drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is what I offer. This is the journey that I take you on. And these are the stages of that journey towards what you want to achieve in terms of activity, movement, fitness, exercise, or whatever. It's a baseline. It's a starting point. Service excellence, in my head, is something different. Service excellence, massively important. It's hugely important because it means that I've achieved what the client expected to achieve and some more. If I do that and some more via service excellence, what it does is it justifies the cost or the fee that they're paying, either to the facility or to me, but it also makes them feel reassured about what they're getting. The act of help that they're getting is meeting their expectations and some more. In terms of achieving service excellence, and I've nearly finished on this bit, but in terms of achieving service excellence, for me, it's a matter of two things, really. It's about staff learning knowledge, understanding, and how they apply it about the facilities or about their own mission, vision, values, audience, and niche, and how they apply that, and the equipment and the products they use along the way as the member goes through this journey. But it's also about development. And I consider development around the staff or my own skills and behaviours. So I make that journey, I make that service as slick as possible. So it not only meets what the client or customer or member expected, it actually meets some more. That's how I would define service excellence and learning and development within that. Experiences, for me, are slightly different. Experiences, according to Joseph Pine, which is a book that I mentioned in the book list earlier, is the new or the next level in member or customer value. There's a lovely book that I also mentioned in my book list. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. I've jumped ahead of myself. Experiences are categorised, if you like, by feelings of joy and pleasure. And that's going to be really important over the next few slides. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote a book called Flow, and it was in my book list earlier. And for me, it's probably the best book about personal training that's not been written about personal training. But the optimal experience he defines is that it is an end in and of itself. There's a joy in just doing what we're doing in the moment, regardless of what the long-term outcome is. And people have interpreted this in a lovely way, and they say when you're in flow, or what individuals term as flow state, you're having an optimal experience where hours seem like minutes, your worries of the day fall away from you, and your sense of self becomes stronger. And that actually happens within the moment. And who wouldn't want that for a member, for a client, for a customer? So this is how Csikszentmihalyi defines an optimal experience. In the book Drive by Daniel Pink, which was also in my book list, he talks about autotelic experiences. And I think they're quite closely linked with the theory of flow state, if you like. Autotelic experiences are about self-end or self-goal or self-purpose, which again means that it's just about the moment and completing things in the moment, and there is a real purpose to doing something. You could also describe autotelic experiences, the fact that we lose ourselves in the process. that it's not about the outcome, the long-term goal. It is about the moment and just enjoying the process that you're going through. Autotelic experience are inherently enjoyable and meaningful. And this, for me, is the way that an experience is separated from a service or service excellence. Maybe a service and service excellence focuses on the long-term goal and what the individual wants to achieve, and that's fine. But the experience focuses on the moment and how someone enjoys the moment. You've probably guessed by now, listening to me, chatting away if you like, that experiences are measured in feelings and sensations. That's how they're actually measured. And in terms of feelings, I suppose the feelings that I think about when I'm training someone are feelings of trust and safety and comfort, feelings of enjoyment. And if we move down this list towards the bottom, feelings of identity, the fact that I feel as if I've now got an exercise identity. I am part of a group, part of a community. There's a sense of relatedness there, which is a little bit more powerful than a sense of belonging. It means I'm contributing and my views are recognized, if you like. There's also feelings of happiness and autonomy. These are the feelings for me that I'm trying to achieve in the moment through what I'm doing. Experiences are also unique to the individual. And maybe this is me, and maybe this is my lack of understanding, but I read some articles on the experience and individuals say, you know, we're really thinking about how we plan our customer experience. And I can't grasp hold of that because experiences are unique to the individual. I get the fact that they're thinking about service excellence in the fact that it is an experience, but the experience itself is unique to the individual. My brother lives in a very different world to me. He often says to me, Keith, you've got to go to this restaurant. It's a great experience. You've got to visit this hotel. It's a great experience. But it might not be an experience for me. I agree. I might see or feel service excellence, and I might see that the money I paid for it was worthwhile. It exceeded my expectations and a little bit more. But whether it was an experience or not is down to the individual. They are hyper personal. And when I use this term sometimes with a few friends, I suppose hyper personal has some connotations to it that may be linked to apps or information technology or how we design technology. But I really do feel that hyper personal is something for me that when I'm standing in front of someone, if I want to create an experience, I build on the service that I'm offering. I try and achieve service excellence, and then I'm trying to make it hyper personal, because that's when we truly do create experiences and they do become lost in the moment, and hours do seem like minutes, and maybe their worries of the day fall away from them, and maybe they do get a stronger sense of self. Before we move on, I would like to talk about logic and reasoning and science of exercise. I am taking nothing away from this. This is massively important. If I don't understand the science of exercise, if I can't reason with the science of exercise, then fundamentally I don't have a service to offer, and I can't build service excellence on top of that because I have nothing to offer. So originally I did my qualifications in the UK, and I continually still read around what is happening in the science of exercise and go on courses to develop my understanding around the science of exercise so I can reason with that information to make sure it's appropriate for the person standing in front of me. I also justify what I do, with logic. I tell a client, if I'm with a client at the start of the session, I will tell them what we're doing and what we're actually doing in the session and how what we're doing links to their overall goals. And then at the end of the session, I recap what we've done, justifying what we've done in terms of their long-term goals. So I bookend the session that we're delivering with justifications. But in the middle, I try and create the experience. From the warm-up to the cool-down is all about the moment and enjoying the moment and just enjoying that in and of itself. That to me is the experience. This is how I think about the experience. Please forgive me. Information comes in from the outside world, vision, hearing, smell, taste and touch. But it also comes in internally via my proprioceptors. And that's going to be important when we look at context in the second, or content in the second half of this session. So information is coming in. I filter and analyze that information, and I filter and analyze it through my current perceptions, my expectations, my previous learnings, my individual biases, and the context that I'm in. And then I create the unique experience. This to me is a simplified thought process of what is happening all the time in terms of creating the experience, those moments. As I said before, experiences are defined by the client. They're defined by the member. One final thing, and I think we're about halfway, well, just under halfway through this now. I hope I'm not boring you. Feelings are important because they drive behavior. I think it's undisputed now. It doesn't matter what book you read. You know, I think it's about 95% of the purchasing decisions we make are emotionally driven. So if we can, via trying to deliver service excellence and then influencing service excellence, which we're going to look at in the second half of this session, if we try and influence it and try and create these experiences where people get lost in the process, they get lost in the moment, we're going to create more deep and meaningful feelings, which hopefully lead to adherence and increased frequency of visit or consistency of visit, which finally leads to retention. And we know that adherence is the number one influencer on retention. So there is another reason why we should think about creating unique experiences where someone just enjoys the process of coming to the facility for that session, because at the end of the day, it may well be a factor in retention. At the start of this session, about 20 minutes ago, I said my aims were to talk about the human experience and the considerations for the gym floor. I'd like to end this little bit of the session by looking at what the human experience actually is for me. The human experience is the fact that we lose ourselves in the process. That for me is the experience. It is built on service. It is developed from service excellence. It is about the individual that's in front of me. And maybe, just maybe, and please forgive me for this, but just maybe, fitness and exercise is no longer the product. And I'm sorry if that offends anyone. Maybe fitness and exercise is not the product if we're going to truly think about developing and creating unique experiences. Maybe the member is the product. And I know this has sort of certain negative connotations, because if we get a product and we don't pay for it, then it means that I'm the product. Like when we when we download apps that are free, if I haven't paid for it, then maybe I am the product. There is that school of thought. But for me, this sentence is important because the member is a product of the environment that I create, or the environment that is created by the facility, which is important in the second bit of this session. In terms of moving on to the second outcome is how we go about influencing the exercise or client experience and the considerations that I or the facility or an instructor needs to think about. Touch points are covered in the UK, are covered as part of the level 2 gym instructor syllabus, and they're also covered as part of the level 3 gym instructor syllabus. So we are familiar in the UK when we do courses with colleges and training providers of the concept of touch points. I'd like to expand on that briefly. If you've seen me deliver before, you've seen me use this image. This image was designed by an Italian psychologist. I'm not going to dare use his name because my wife says that my English is moody enough, let alone try and pronounce something in Italian. But I love this image. This image reminds me of actually the experience and how I influence the experience. And I'd like to explain it to you if I can. If you look at the image on the screen, hopefully after a little while, a white triangle appears in the center. The peak is at the top and the two bases are at the bottom, and it's right in the center. That white triangle reminds me of the individual, the client, the member's experience. And the reason it reminds me of the experience is that that white triangle is an illusion. That white triangle does not appear. It's not been drawn on the slide. The only place that white triangle exists is in our head. It's an illusion. And to a certain extent, the experience is an illusion. It's defined by the client. It's unique to them. So that white triangle reminds me of the experience. Right now, I have no control. Whether you're watching this live or you're watching the video, I have no control over the experience you're having. It is unique to you. The incomplete dots and the incomplete triangles that are positioned on the slide in such a way that they create the illusion of the white triangle, I refer to those as touch points. And for me, touch points influence the experience. Now, there are many, many touch points that a member and a customer could have on their journey. And there are many, many touch points that a member or a client or a customer could have when they're on the gym floor. Yeah, but this image clearly does remind me of the client experience. Touch points influence individuals. They influence individuals and they impact on someone's state, their state of mind, and their mood in the moment. And I'd like to talk about two lots of touch points, of which the fact there are many. But I'd like to look at two lots of touch points that may well help influence a customer or client's experience. The first touch point is content. Content is clearly a touch point. So we're going back to the science of exercise again. There are feelings connected with the science of exercise, although I'm using it to justify a session and how it links to their overall goals. There are definitely feelings that come from content. And when I talk about content in the context of this session, we're talking about exercise choice, exercise order, and exercise intensity, and how I manipulate those over time as an act of help to lead the client towards their goals. But I also use it in the moment as part of the experience, as part of the process to get them lost in the moment. And in terms of getting them lost in the moment, it's a fine balance between complexity and intensity. If I get the complexity and intensity right of that individual session, that workout, and I create feelings that make someone feel capable, that make someone feel confident, that make someone feel beautiful. Yeah, those are feelings that are unique to them and could be considered to be part of the experience. On the other hand, if I get the complexity and intensity wrong, I could make them feel anxious. I could make them feel awkward. I could make them feel uncomfortable. So although content, exercise choice, order and intensity, the science of exercise is linked to the act of help and leading a client towards their goals over time, it's also fundamental in terms of the individual sessions, and each session should have feelings regardless of someone's fitness level and skill level. They should have feelings connected to success. Every single set, every single rep, every single exercise should have feelings connected with it of success. And that is a fine balance between complexity and intensity, and that happens in the moment, so they enjoy the process. The session becomes meaningful. In terms of doing that, these are some of the factors that I need to consider in the moment when I'm planning and delivering a session. I've already mentioned someone's fitness level and skill level. Also, their levels of motivation, their levels of anxiety, their levels of confidence, their levels of capability, the expectations, their personal perceptions, their exercise likes and dislikes. All of these things are massively important when I'm planning to create moments, the individual sessions that link to the experience. Members and clients don't care what we know. They care about how we make them feel, and content is a huge part of that. Content must do two things as far as I'm concerned. There are two things that are linked to content. Content must link to the overall goal, the overall outcome. I must be able to justify that. It's part of my act of help. It's part of my service or service excellence. It's based on the science and the logic. That's the first part of content. The second part of content is, as I mentioned a few moments ago, the fact that it is structured, that there is success in the moment, that every single set, every single exercise, every single repetition, every single bit of rest time gives feelings of success related to it, and the client feels as if they are moving forward and there is just joy in doing the process. That influences someone's state and their mood, which is part of the experience. I said there were two elements of touch points that I'd like to look at. The second one is context. Context for me in this session, I'm going to define as the environment that is created. Yeah, which links back to what I said earlier, where perhaps the customer, the exerciser, the client is the product. They're a product of the environment that we create. There are a couple of bits of context that I'd like to talk about, but then I'm going to elaborate on one just towards the end of this section, if I may. The first bit of context is that gyms over the last 20, 25 years are still one big space, but there are loads of different places. It's quite clear that gyms are a space, but within that space there are loads of different places, and those different places are part of the environment, which makes them part of the context, if you like. Now, people who are experienced with exercise, people that are confident on the gym floor, probably don't notice those places, but those places have been specifically designed, you know, to work certain components of fitness, but also to make people feel comfortable. You know, and we have to recognize that. If you were to train me and put me in front of a mirror in the free weight area, you'd never see me again. Yeah, because I do not want to look at this. The only good thing about being Keith Smith is I live on this side of my face. If you were to put me in the so-called functional area and train me, again, you would never see me again, because in that space, it's quite open. I feel as if I'm being evaluated by others. So the place that you train me in within the gym space is part of the context, is part of the environment, and we need to think about that. Other things that influence context are an individual's personal brand and their personality, and how that comes across in your delivery and in your service excellence. Another form of context is the interactions that you have and how you use your different interactions, from engaging with them, perhaps via email, text message, or WhatsApp, perhaps interacting with them in terms of acknowledgement when they're in club on the gym floor, or perhaps you develop it a little bit more and there's quality small talk that influences them. Yeah, or there's quality big talk. But certainly interactions and the different levels of interactions, from engagement through to acknowledgement, small talk and big talk, are massive in terms of the context, the environment in which we train people. And the final one is the one that I'd like to focus on just a little bit, which is probably, for me as an instructor, for me as a personal trainer, and for someone who delivers group exercise on the gym floor, it is my delivery. Because within my delivery, I create an environment that's key in terms of creating experiences. In terms of my delivery, I think there are 7 fundamental skills. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think there are about 7 fundamental skills that I need to be able to use on the spot in terms of creating the experience. And I'm just going to go over a couple, if I may. One of the delivery skills is my language. How I use language with the individual that's in front of me. I'll give you an example. If someone is new to exercise who's standing in front of me, and they've not been in the gym for a long time, I certainly would personally keep my language simple, because I want to make them feel as if they belong, and making them feel as if they belong is understanding what we're doing. So if we were doing a body weight squat, I probably wouldn't name the muscles in terms of using its Latin name or its technical name. I probably might use front of the thigh, back of the thigh. In fact, I might not even mention them. I might just point to them. It doesn't mean that the client is stupid. I'm just trying to communicate with them at their level, knowing that they've had bad experiences in the past, and I just want to make them feel as if they belong. They start to trust me. They feel safe and comfortable, which is the feelings that I'm trying to create in the moment, that there is a sense of purpose in terms of what we're doing. Another thing about language, and I'm going to be well out of order right now and probably upset the whole of the industry, but you know, here we go, is the terminology that we use. I have a functional training. Just bear with me on this. I think I've got a grasp of what functional training actually is. And if I was to meet 1 or 2 of you at a convention, at an event, I think we could have, or I could be part of a conversation about functional training. But I would never use the term functional in front of a paying client. I don't think it's luxury enough. Every single exercise has value. Every single exercise should have direction, meaning, and purpose. It should be of value. The term functional in the dictionary is designed to be practical and useful rather than attractive. I think even the language that we use, you know, in terms of being somewhat luxury, is important in terms of creating the experience. So I would use the term functional training when having a conversation or trying to have my limited knowledge of, although I think I've got a grasp of it, I would use functional training when talking to someone in the industry. I think I understand it, but I certainly wouldn't use functional when I'm having a client or a customer conversation, because they might define it as something that's just practical and useful rather than attractive. Why am I paying you for this if this is just practical and useful? Where's the value in it for me? So language is really important. Another thing that's important in our delivery is praise. If you look at Albert Bandura and his theory of self-efficacy being a specific kind of confidence related to an environment, and if self-efficacy goes up, we know that there is a greater chance of them coming back. Bandura talks about verbal persuasion. And verbal persuasion could be a number of things like mentoring or teaching, but it could actually also be the feedback that we give someone when they're doing an exercise. When we praise someone, we don't just say that something is good. We tell them the reasons why it's good. So if I'm doing a bicep curl, I might say to a client, that's lovely. Feet are hip width apart and your arm is close to the side of the body. I praise them by using the term good or beautiful or gorgeous or lovely, and I tell them why. I link my comment to their efforts. We clearly know that goes a long way in raising the belief that they can be successful. So my language is important in creating this context environment. The way I go about praising them is important in creating or influencing this context, this environment. And finally, my positioning. where I place myself when I'm delivering. Now, that is affected massively, perhaps, by the way that the gym is designed. And sometimes I might not be able to take up the best positioning. But positioning for me is basically two things. Where I position myself in terms of distance from how well I know that client in terms of spacing, but also positioning to make eye contact. It really does upset me when I see a client working very hard on the rower and the trainer decides to sit on the rower next to them and talk to them. So as the client is rowing and the trainer's talking to them, the client has to turn their head to engage with them. I find that quite outrageous, that a paying client has to turn their head to engage with the trainer because they want to make eye contact. All the trainer has to do is come round to the fan end of the rower, come down onto one knee to make good eye contact at an appropriate distance. So this environment that we're trying to create, this context that we're trying to create, our positioning in terms of the distance from the client, in terms of how well we know them, and the ability to make eye contact is massively important. It helps the context, it helps the environment. There are these 7 things that are important, and we really don't have that much time to go over them, but I just wanted to go over these 2 touch points. And again, what affects how I use these touch points is about the factors that affect that individual in the moment. Remember, experiences are all about the moment. It's about a sense of purpose, a joy of doing something in the moment, and what is affecting them, and how do I get around that? Touch points, it's not just about what we do. It has to be about how we do it. Touch points are all about the moment and what I do in the moment, both in terms of content and context, to try and influence the experience. Maybe, if as trainers we take more care of the moments, then maybe the customer's goal may well look after itself. We're into the home straight now, team. Just a couple of minutes left. In terms of achieving the experience, there's one thing that I think we need to discuss right now, and that is the concept of mastery. Again, going back to my book list at the start, there was a book there called Coaching for Performance by Sir John Whitmore, and he calls this the ladder to mastery. I'm sure that there are other authors out there who've explained it just as well, who call it something different. But there are different stages to my capabilities, if you like, as an instructor. If I'm in unconscious incompetence, basically, I don't even know what I don't know. And then perhaps I start to read the book and watch some videos on YouTube around a specific subject, and I start to become consciously incompetent. I now realize there are things that I don't know that I need to know. The third one down is really important for us in the industry, and that's when you're consciously competent. For me, I remember this point when I passed my exams. I passed my qualifications. Someone had laid down a criteria and said, if you achieve this criteria, we think you're capable of being a personal trainer. It's a cause for celebration being consciously competent in our industry. The problem with being consciously competent is that I'm still thinking about what I'm doing and I'm not thinking about the individual in front of me. And if I'm not thinking about the individual in front of me, then perhaps I'm not creating or influencing the experience as I should be. To influence the experience massively in terms of capability, we need to be unconsciously competent. Unconsciously competent means that we've had so much practice with something that what we do becomes second nature. We are just that good at it, we don't even have to think about it. And I'm sure there's things that you do where you have reached the stage of being unconsciously competent, where things just become second nature. Once things become second nature, we are able to focus on others. I stop thinking about what I need to do, consciously capable or consciously competent, and I start to, when I'm unconsciously competent, when I'm unconsciously capable, I'm able to focus on others. Once I can focus on others, there's a greater chance that I can influence the experience. Ericsson tells us, who's said to be the godfather of skill training, but Ericsson tells us that in terms of getting to this level, what is required is deliberate practice. And I'll let you go and look that up for yourselves. Unconsciously competent, and this is probably the key for me, when I look at individuals who I feel are influencing the experience massively for their customers, their clients on the gym floor, unconsciously competent or unconsciously capable means that they are able to improvise in the moment. And this is fundamental for me as an instructor, that my skills and behaviours have become second nature. If they're second nature, I can focus on the individual in front of me and I'm able to improvise what I do in the moment. Improvisation means that I create or perform spontaneously without any preparation. But there is a level of capability that I need to get to in order to do this. Once I'm there, I can influence the context even more, because I'm improvising in the moment and creating something that's unique for the individual to try and influence them, to make it hyper personal. Achieving mastery goes all the way back to one of my first slides. It's about learning and development. But as I said earlier, Ericsson, it's about development. It's about developing those skills and behaviors so I become unconsciously capable. In fact, it's more than that. I develop those skills to the point at which I can improvise those skills and behaviors in the moment to influence the context and create an environment that someone feels comfortable in. Going back to my aims of this session, it was the human experience and the considerations for the gym floor. I'd like just to look at the considerations for the gym floor, if I may. Gym floor experiences for me are all about solving individuals' challenges, which goes back to a service or service excellence. It's an act of help. Then gym floor experiences are about creating memorable moments, enjoying the process, just doing something for the joy of doing it, which leads to adherence, which fundamentally leads on to retention of clients. Finally, the last outcome, and we're going to be around 45 minutes, so I thank you for your time. What's the real world value to this? Why am I talking about this? Before I come on to that, this is a serious consideration, I think. And again, this is me in my little world thinking that exercise and fitness is now free. As AI develops, the theory and the science of exercise and fitness is becoming free to the customer, the member, the exerciser. If all I have is exercise and fitness knowledge, then I'm in trouble. I can be replaced. Yeah. And I don't believe that everything done through technology is responsible for a good experience. It might be seamless, but that doesn't mean that the client is interpreting that as a good experience and something that they're willing to pay for. What is required is more connection with the member and the client, making it more human. If we're going to create experiences, and we want to create experiences when we need to be more human, ensuring that the time that they spend with us is meaningful, enjoyable, and of value. Is it possible, and I'm just putting it out there, is it possible that feelings are the future of our industry? I go to fitness events. I watch many outstanding presenters and speakers deliver with passion and deliver from a place of knowledge and deliver from a place of wanting to help others. Yeah, but no one seems to talk that much about feelings. It's all about product, and I'm not against product. I think that the quality of the product does affect the individual's experience, But is it worth thinking about that maybe feelings and the creating of feelings in the moment is the future of our industry? And what I mean by that, be less logical, but still safe and effective, but more emotionally connected. Experiences, they change us. They change our state. They change our mood. I did say that this section was about real world value, and I came across this quote in a book that I read recently, and I have adapted it slightly, but this is the quote, and I think this is the value for experiences. Members and clients buy into the feelings, and they pay for the feelings in the continual use of the services that we offer. The services being the act of help, and the feelings being the experience. My aims of this session were to define the experience, how we might go about influencing the experiences. And there are many things that influence the experience. And I just spoke about content and context, creating an environment, and maybe what the real world value was to thinking about creating experiences. Thank you very much for your time. And if you want to get hold of me, this is how you can contact me. Thank you very much.